I remember the day I finally admitted to myself that I needed help. It was a cold afternoon, and I was 78 years old, standing by my kitchen window, watching the leaves fall from the old maple tree in the backyard. My morning coffee sat on the counter, untouched and getting cold. In my right hand, I held a cigarette, one of many I'd lit over the decades. For so long, I had believed I was too set in my ways to ever quit. I'd heard people say, "It's too late to stop now," or "What's the point at your age?" And in truth, a part of me believed them. Still, I felt a dull ache deep down, a quiet but persistent voice saying, "You can be free of this." That day, I realized that I owed it to myself and to the people who loved me to find a healthier path forward. It's no secret that many older adults struggle with long-standing habits, especially smoking. We often pick up these routines when we're young. They provide comfort, a sense of familiarity, and sometimes they become as much a part of our daily rituals as brushing our teeth or reading the morning paper. But just because a habit has been around for decades doesn't mean it can't be changed. That's an important message I wish I'd taken to heart sooner. The ability to shift our routines even later in life can be one of our most powerful moves toward better health, comfort, and peace of mind. What made it so important for me to address my tobacco use now, in my late 70s? I realized that every time I lit up, I felt a nagging sense of uncertainty. How much more strain was I putting on my body? Would I suddenly develop new or worse health issues? For years, the fear was there, but it was so entangled with my everyday life that I ignored it. I told myself it was just a small pleasure, something that eased stress. But deep down, I knew that continuing to smoke could rob me of my independence in ways I might not notice until it was too late. Shortness of breath on my afternoon walks, reduced stamina for chores around the house, or even the possibility of more serious complications. Deciding to use a nicotine replacement therapy, or NRT for short, at 78 felt like stepping onto a new path, one where I didn't have to go it alone. I wasn't sure where to begin at first, but eventually I found a combination of patches and supportive strategies that helped me deal with cravings without forcing me into a cold turkey shock. Choosing this route wasn't an overnight fix. Nothing truly worthwhile ever is. But it offered me a kind of safety net while I worked on breaking free from the old mental patterns that had kept me smoking for decades. You might be wondering if it's too late for you or if you've missed the window to make meaningful changes in your life. Let me assure you, it's never too late. The very fact that we're still here, able to question and explore our decisions, is proof of our capacity for growth. In a moment, I want to share with you 4 important lessons I learned after deciding to try nicotine replacement therapy. These lessons shifted how I view not just smoking, but health, personal identity, and the sense of possibility we have at any age. By the end of our time together, you'll see that your life, whether you're 65, 78 like I was, or well into your 80s, doesn't have to be anchored by old harmful habits. I'm not a physician, and everything I share is from my own experience, conversations with professionals, and observations of other older adults on similar journeys. Always consult with your healthcare provider before making changes to your medications or health routines. My goal is simply to offer hope and practical wisdom, like a friend who's walked this road before. If you have questions, or you've already tried something that worked or didn't work, I invite you to keep an open mind and stay until the end. I'd love for us to compare notes. Now let's walk through the 4 lessons that came out of my decision to use nicotine replacement therapy. Lessons that helped me breathe easier, gain more confidence in my everyday life, and even rediscover a zest for simple pleasures. It's my hope that by sharing these insights, I can show you it's possible to make a real change and create a healthier, more fulfilling chapter in your life. First, I'd like to address a common idea many of us seniors have about ourselves, that our routines are set in stone. Contrary to what people might say, we are fully capable of adapting and improving our habits. Let's start with a misconception that held me back for years, the notion that, at our age, quitting smoking isn't worth the effort anymore. Many older adults believe that decades of smoking have already done the damage. I used to think it's too late to fix what's broken. But is that really true? Let's consider the story of Leonard, a gentleman I met in a support group who was 83 at the time. Leonard had smoked for over 60 years and faced multiple health concerns, including chronic bronchitis. He was convinced that any change at his age wouldn't make a difference. If he had tried to quit in his 50s, maybe then it would have mattered, but now, that was his assumption. Yet his doctor gently suggested nicotine replacement therapy to see if he could at least reduce how much he smoked each day. Like Leonard, I believed I was in too deep. But after a month of using a combination of patches and gum, Leonard noticed that he coughed less in the mornings, and he had more energy for daily tasks. Instead of dozing off in front of the TV after breakfast, he started taking a short walk around his block. Soon he noticed he could go a bit farther without feeling winded. Though he still had days when he slipped back into smoking more than he intended, overall his breathing and stamina improved. The difference wasn't dramatic like flipping a switch, but it was enough for him to realize that change was not only possible, it was happening already, and he was the one making it happen. That personal example highlights a key piece of evidence-based insight. Even if you've been smoking for decades, your body can still rebound in many ways once you reduce or eliminate tobacco. The healing process might be more gradual for some than for others, but research suggests that after you cut back or quit, your risk for certain complications begins to go down. You may notice you're not as short of breath when walking to the mailbox. Your sense of taste and smell might get sharper, and you may sleep more soundly. None of these are guaranteed to happen overnight, but these incremental changes can have a real impact on your independence and your quality of life. So what does this mean practically? First, know that nicotine replacement therapy can be an ally. It doesn't promise instant results, but it can cushion the transition from heavy smoking to a healthier pattern. Some people use patches, others prefer gum or lozenges. If mobility or dexterity is an issue, your healthcare provider might recommend a certain form that's easier for you to handle, like a patch that you only have to change once a day, rather than a gum you have to chew on schedule. The key is to view this therapy as one step in a larger journey rather than a magic solution. You can pair it with mindful breathing exercises, short walks when you feel an urge, or even a simple hobby to keep your hands busy. Every small shift counts. Emotionally, this lesson teaches us that as older adults, we are not locked into a predetermined destiny of continued smoking and health decline. I cannot overstate the empowering feeling of recognizing that you're still capable of growth. If you find yourself hesitating, afraid that your best health days are behind you, remind yourself of Leonard's example. Even in his 80s, he found his footing, discovered new energy, and started proving his own doubts wrong. You might be thinking, well, that's just one person's story, but I've seen many variations of it. Older friends, neighbors, and acquaintances who decided to make a change, used small aids like nicotine patches, and found that life didn't have to be limited by an old habit. If you're open to the possibility that you could feel better, live more comfortably, and do more of what you enjoy, that's a sign you're already on the path to change. Now here's a quick check-in. How does it make you feel to learn that improvement is possible at any age? Is there any part of you saying, maybe I can do this too? I encourage you to keep that spark alive as we explore the next lesson I learned, which is all about the emotional side of quitting smoking and why nicotine replacement therapy can be a much-needed support. When we face fear and discomfort head-on, we open up room for new beginnings. If someone had told me years ago about the emotional roller coaster of smoking cessation, I would have nodded politely but brushed it off. It's easy to assume that quitting is purely a physical issue. No more cigarettes, no more nicotine, end of story. But what many seniors fail to realize, and what I discovered, is that cigarettes often serve as emotional anchors in our lives. They're tied to memories, stress relief, routines, and even a sense of identity, especially if you've been smoking for half a century or more. The misconception many seniors hold is that once you decide to quit, all you need is willpower. That's what my late friend Pauline believed. She was 76 when she tried to quit smoking for the umpteenth time. A proud, independent woman, Pauline had always done everything on her own terms. She believed that if she just decided something, she could stick to it. Unfortunately, smoking had become more than just a habit. It was an emotional safety net. When she felt lonely or anxious, a cigarette was her closest companion. Whenever she tried to quit cold turkey, she found herself wrestling with overwhelming feelings of restlessness and irritation. She'd end up lighting a cigarette, feeling terrible about herself, then trying again the next day. The cycle left her drained and angry. Nicotine replacement therapy can help manage the physical cravings for nicotine, but it also offers a subtle emotional buffer. By providing a controlled dose of nicotine, it prevents that abrupt, jarring withdrawal that can send your emotions spinning. This doesn't mean you won't feel any cravings at all, but it can take the edge off and create some space for you to handle the underlying emotions, loneliness, boredom, or stress, that might have you reaching for a cigarette. Imagine it like this. Instead of walking a tightrope with no safety net, where if you slip, you crash, you have a gentle harness that keeps you from plummeting. That's how I felt when I first started using patches. I still had to face the fact that I missed the ritual of lighting up, or the comfort it gave me when I was worried about doctor's appointments. But at least I wasn't battling both my old habits and intense nicotine withdrawal at the same time. Practical steps here might include finding new ways to cope with stress or loneliness. For me, it was simple. I started journaling. Each morning, instead of reaching for a cigarette, I spent 5 minutes writing down my thoughts. On tougher days, I'd pick up the phone and call a friend just to chat, share a funny story, or reminisce. These small actions, combined with the steady support of the patch, helped me realize that the emotional grip smoking had on me was slowly loosening. You could try a different approach, such as prayer or meditation, gentle stretching, or even putting on a favorite piece of music to shift your mood. And there's a real emotional reward in doing this. You begin to trust yourself more. You start seeing that you're capable of handling life's ups and downs without the constant need to light a cigarette. Over time, that trust can grow into a new sense of self, one that doesn't revolve around the next smoke break. It's like renovating a house you've lived in forever. It's still yours, but it feels fresh, and suddenly the windows let in more light. Of course, that's not to say there won't be setbacks. I remember one evening when I'd had a particularly hard day dealing with insurance paperwork. I could feel that old itch, the familiar craving, telling me a cigarette would calm my nerves. That's when I leaned on the patch and decided to distract myself by organizing a shelf in my living room that I'd been meaning to clean for years. It wasn't the most exciting task, but it kept me busy long enough for the craving to pass. And when I got through it, the sense of accomplishment was immeasurable. I'd proven to myself that I could manage my emotions in a different way. Every time you choose to handle emotions without a cigarette, you reinforce a healthier pattern. You might slip occasionally, but slip-ups aren't failures. They're just signals that you might need more support or a new strategy. Nicotine replacement therapy is one tool, but so are family, friends, and meaningful activities that fill your day with purpose. Over time, the emotional baggage attached to smoking starts to lighten, making it easier to see a path forward. Now that we've touched on how NRT can support you emotionally as well as physically, take a moment to reflect. Do you lean on cigarettes during stressful or lonely periods? What would it look like to create new coping mechanisms that don't involve tobacco? Sometimes, just imagining the possibilities can unlock the motivation to start trying. Up next is a crucial realization I wish I'd understood sooner. The idea that using nicotine replacement therapy doesn't mean you have failed or that you're weak. On the contrary, it can be a strategic, empowering choice that aligns with the wisdom and experiences we've gained over a lifetime. There is a lingering belief among some older adults that asking for help is a sign of weakness. We might think we should tough it out or that we shouldn't rely on aids like patches or gums. That was certainly my mindset. I was raised in an era that prized self-reliance. If you can't do it on your own, you're not trying hard enough, was practically the motto. But is that really what wisdom looks like? Let me share the story of Beverly, a retired teacher who turned 80 last year. Beverly had always believed in doing things the natural way. She prided herself on never needing help to handle life's challenges. When she realized her smoking habit was beginning to rob her of her ability to enjoy gardening, she'd get winded after a few minutes in the yard. She tried to quit on her own, but each attempt ended in frustration. "I'm just not strong enough," she'd say, which made her feel even more powerless. Eventually, her granddaughter, a physician's assistant, encouraged her to try nicotine lozenges. Beverly was reluctant at first, feeling like she was somehow giving in. Yet as soon as she started using them, she noticed a world of difference. She still put in the effort, resisting the urge to smoke, finding healthier routines, But she didn't feel like she was constantly battling the full force of withdrawal. The lozenges gave her the extra support she needed to keep going. This story shows how seeking help can actually be a sign of wisdom and strength, especially for older adults. After all, we've spent decades learning how to solve problems effectively. Why wouldn't we use all the resources available to us? Nicotine replacement therapy is one such resource. It's not about being lazy, it's about being strategic. Just as we might use a cane or walker if our knees are acting up, an NRT product can help steady us while we move toward a healthier lifestyle. Here's where evidence-based insights back us up. Research over many years has shown that nicotine replacement therapy can significantly improve the chances of cutting back or quitting successfully. These products reduce withdrawal symptoms and cravings, making it easier for you to focus on building better habits, like staying active, improving your diet, or simply enjoying your day without the constant pull of a cigarette. And for seniors who may be more sensitive to the stress of withdrawal, this can be a literal lifesaver. The practical advice here is to pick a form of NRT that works with your daily routine. If you're someone who has trouble remembering to do things multiple times a day, a once-a-day patch might be your best bet. If you prefer something you can reach for when cravings hit, gum or lozenges are options. Speak with a healthcare professional, especially if you're on other medications, so they can help you navigate any potential interactions. Don't be shy about asking questions regarding dosage or how to manage minor side effects like skin irritation from patches or a mild throat discomfort from lozenges. These can usually be addressed, and they're often far less severe than the effects of continued smoking. In terms of emotional benefits, acknowledging that you're using a support tool can feel like a relief. Instead of berating yourself for not quitting by sheer will alone, you can focus on the positive steps you're taking. Each day you stick with a patch or chew a piece of nicotine gum instead of smoking is a victory, one that can build momentum and confidence. Over time, you might discover an inner resilience you didn't realize you had. You begin to see that being tough isn't always about going it alone. It can also be about knowing when to accept a helping hand. Beverly, for instance, eventually weaned herself off the lozenges. It didn't happen overnight. She used them consistently for several months, then gradually cut back on how often she reached for them, until one day she found she didn't need them at all. Even then, she kept a few in a kitchen drawer in case a strong craving struck during a particularly stressful day. But the important part was that she recognized a tool that was helping her and wasn't ashamed to use it. So if you've been holding back because you think you have to prove something to yourself or others, I encourage you to reframe that. Approaching a challenge like smoking cessation with humility and resourcefulness is a real display of courage. Remember, we live in an age where medical advancements and supportive products exist to make life easier. Why not make the most of them? Before we move on to our final major lesson, think about where you stand on asking for help. Does it make you uncomfortable, or have you begun to see it as a sign of taking charge of your well-being? Change often starts with a shift in perspective. Whether it's nicotine replacement therapy or something else, if it supports your health and independence, it's worth considering. By now, we've covered how quitting smoking, even in our later years, can yield real benefits, how addressing the emotional component is key, and how using supportive tools like NRT is a show of strength rather than weakness. The next step is understanding the broader impact this kind of change can have on your life. And that's something I learned through a surprising discovery. It's not just about quitting cigarettes, it's about rediscovering what makes you feel alive. A lot of us seniors think, at my age, I know who I am. We assume that our identity is fully formed. But one of the biggest misconceptions is that identity can't evolve beyond a certain point. The truth is, you can surprise yourself. That's exactly what happened to Marjorie, a fellow church member who'd been a smoker for over 50 years. After she cut back and eventually stopped smoking with the help of nicotine patches, she found she had more energy and money to spend on things she loved, like painting. She started taking art classes, something she'd never done before. She told me, "It's like I spent years with a gray cloud over my head, and when it finally lifted, I realized I still had dreams I wanted to chase." Marjorie's experience resonates with the research that shows how even small improvements in breathing, circulation, and daily energy can have ripple effects. When you're no longer coughing every morning or feeling that tightness in your chest, you might be more willing to try new activities, engage in social events, or simply enjoy a favorite hobby without constant fatigue. These little changes build on themselves, creating a sense of renewed purpose. It's not just about removing a negative habit, smoking. It's about adding positive elements to your life. The practical advice here is to start exploring what you might have set aside or never had time for. Maybe you used to love dancing or playing an instrument. Maybe you have a half-finished scrapbook or a stack of novels you've been meaning to read. By pairing nicotine replacement therapy with a new or revived interest, you give your brain and your heart something to focus on that isn't tied to cigarettes. When that craving hits, instead of sitting around thinking about it, you can channel that restless energy into something creative or productive. Another plus is how this transformation can improve your relationships. When you're healthier and more engaged with life, family and friends often notice. They might see you as more present, more vibrant. Grandchildren, for instance, might enjoy your company in ways they never have before. And you can model for them a profound lesson, that growth and self-discovery aren't limited by age. Emotionally, letting go of smoking can lift a tremendous burden. The sense of guilt or worry that often accompanies lighting up fades over time, replaced by a feeling of freedom. You might find yourself smiling more, breathing more deeply, and even standing up a bit taller, literally and figuratively. You're not just following a list of health rules, you're carving out new possibilities for how you spend your days and who you choose to be at this stage of life. Let's be clear, though. This doesn't happen overnight. There may be moments when you doubt the point of it all. You might think, so what if I'm free of cigarettes now? I'm still dealing with arthritis or other health concerns. Yet every positive change has a way of spilling over into other areas. Less smoking can mean more mobility, or at least more willingness to get out and move. That can translate into better heart health, better control over weight, and a sharper mind. One step often leads to another. If you're still on the fence, here's a thought. Imagine yourself a few months from now breathing easier as you walk to the park or greet a neighbor. Imagine feeling a renewed sense of purpose, whether it's through a hobby, a community project, or simply taking time to learn something new. That feeling, like Marjorie experienced when she picked up painting, can be profoundly energizing. It reminds you that life is a journey, not a final destination we reach just because we have a certain number of candles on the birthday cake. Reflect for a moment on something you've always wanted to do, but never got around to, or gave up because you thought it was too late. Could easing off cigarettes open a door for that interest to blossom? Even if it's something simple, like being able to walk your dog a few blocks farther or cook a special meal without getting winded, that's a genuine improvement in day-to-day life. Nicotine replacement therapy is simply the bridge that can help you get there. At this point, you might want to pause and think about what a more active, engaged future could look like. This is your life, your journey, and the next steps are up to you. In a moment, I'll wrap up all these lessons with a few final thoughts on how to get started, how to stay motivated, and why now, no matter your age, can be the perfect time to reclaim your sense of freedom. Looking back, I'm grateful I made the decision to try nicotine replacement therapy when I did. It wasn't a miraculous one-day transformation, but I gradually noticed the smoke haze in my life clearing away. I could breathe a bit easier, walk a bit farther, and I wasn't scrambling to rearrange my day around cigarette breaks. The 4 lessons I've shared, that quitting at any age is worthwhile, that emotional support is crucial, that asking for help is a sign of strength, and that this journey can unlock newfound purpose, gave me an unexpected hope. Even more important, they reminded me I was not too old to chart a new course. If you've been considering taking a step toward cutting back or quitting smoking, I encourage you to do so sooner rather than later. This isn't about scaring you with dire warnings. It's about helping you see the real, tangible ways your life can improve. Maybe you'll notice small changes at first, a more restful sleep, a clearer sense of taste, or a calmer morning routine. Over time, these small changes can add up to a life that feels richer and more connected, whether that's through spending time with loved ones or exploring new interests. None of this means you have to rush into it blindly. If you're curious about nicotine replacement therapy, make an appointment with your healthcare provider to discuss your options. You can also do some reading or talk to friends who've walked this road. Gathering information is a great first step, and it can reduce any anxiety you have about trying something new. If you have concerns about how the patch or gum might interact with your existing medications, this is definitely a conversation to have with a professional. The key is to take that first informed step. For those of you who feel more ready to dive right in, perhaps your next move is to pick up a starter kit for a patch or gum or to join a support group for seniors. Every person's path is different, so if you find that gum works better than patches, or if you decide to combine NRT with another approach like counseling, that's perfectly valid. It's about creating a custom plan that fits your lifestyle and your emotional needs. As an additional layer of action, I invite you to get a friend or family member involved. Share your goals with them and let them be part of your support system. When you're feeling a craving or wrestling with the thought of just one more cigarette, sometimes a quick phone call or a simple text can remind you why you started this journey in the first place. The people who love you want to see you healthy and happy, and leaning on their encouragement can make a big difference in staying motivated. And finally, consider extending your hand to someone else who might be struggling with the same issue. Sometimes the best way to reinforce our own positive changes is by helping another person walk that road. By sharing your experiences, you not only build community and solidarity, but you also remind yourself of the progress you've made. As you move forward, remember that you have the power to reshape your days and explore new dimensions of your identity, even in your 70s or 80s. Age does not have to be a barrier to better health, more energy, or a deeper sense of fulfillment. The choice is yours, and you have more wisdom and experience at this stage of life than you may realize. Use it to your advantage. Embrace nicotine replacement therapy if it feels right for you, and don't hesitate to seek out the emotional support you need. So here's to the next chapter of your life, one where you breathe easier, wake up with a bit more spring in your step, and discover that taking care of yourself can open doors to new joys and experiences. If you're ready, I encourage you to look into a form of nicotine replacement therapy that suits your lifestyle, talk to your healthcare provider, and set a date to begin. If you want to go a step further, find a local or online community group where you can share victories and setbacks. Above all, keep in mind that you are the architect of your own journey. No matter how long you've been smoking or how ingrained those habits feel, you have options for real, positive change. It's never too late to start writing a healthier, brighter story for yourself. Here's to the hope, the opportunity, and the many ways we can continue evolving at every age. Thank you for spending this time with me. If you found even a flicker of inspiration here, I invite you to share your thoughts with someone close to you, or share this message with another senior who might need it. Remember, our lives are richer when we journey together, encouraging and learning from each other. Wishing you the best of health, one day at a time.